Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Matt, and today I want to talk about one of the biggest things that really made a significant difference in my language learning progress, and that was incorporating reading into my overall process when learning a language. And reading is so huge, and if you aren't already, I really highly suggest you kind of incorporate reading as a core element in your process, because there's just so many advantages. So just to start off with. Reading is amazing for learning new words and just vocabulary acquisition in general. So, when you're reading in a foreign language, you're seeing the same words pop up again and again. And so you kind of almost get this natural review as you read in a language. And you're going to see the most common words in the language because they're the most common words. And you'll see them pop up again and again until finally, you just learn those words. And not only do you learn those words, but you just know them very well where you can use them on command when you're listening, when you're speaking, and things like that. In addition to that, though, if you read a lot of those same subject matters, let's say you're constantly reading about politics or history, you're going to see that specialized vocabulary, as you continue to read about that subject. So you pick up a lot of those specialized words. And then also, the longer that you read, you'll also pick up kind of more uncommon words, and that'll slowly get internalized into your memory as well. In addition, though, too, it's just a compelling way, right? It's a compelling method. So, reading is something that's very interesting and very fun. And so it's not like you are just reviewing flashcards to memorize vocabulary. You're reading and experiencing something pretty enjoyable, but learning vocabulary along the way. And I am a fan of flashcard apps and systems, but it's just kind of another big advantage on the vocabulary acquisition side of things. In addition to that, though, it's a great way to learn grammar as well because you're seeing grammar in context when you're reading. So you are seeing word order in action. You're seeing word order again and again, which helps to help you memorize and internalize those concepts. In addition, also when you are maybe using a SRS flashcard system, usually you'll probably only see the verbs in the infinitive or something like that. And as you read, you'll actually see words conjugated in multiple tenses, like the past, the present, the future, and in kind of different ways, like seeing a verb as we or I. And so, it's really great to just, once again, see grammar in context and just kind of get that exposure in and that memorization in over time. So, if you're not already doing it, reading can be just so huge in the end of the day. Now, what's really important, I think, is to understand, what is not reading, because just reading a couple of sentences in maybe a grammar book, I wouldn't really consider reading, right? Or reading a once-off, paragraph just randomly, or maybe an exercise you might have had at school, right? When I talk about reading, I mean a core component of your language learning process, right? Where you're reading books, you're reading articles, you're reading newspapers, things like that, where you're reading text for a fair amount of time and really putting in a lot of effort and time into the reading process. So I think that's an important distinction to make in terms of what I mean by that. And like I said, reading just is so huge in the end of the day. I think one of the big things that really reading kind of gives you is that it's very motivating because in a lot of ways, when you're reading in a foreign language, you're at that kind of end state goal a lot of people have in terms of being fluent, right? You're trying to read books in a foreign language. You're trying to read newspapers and articles. That's the end goal, end state in at least one aspect of the language. And that could be super motivating. And, in addition to that, you're enjoying compelling content, right? You're enjoying things that you like, right? Ideally, in terms of subject matters you want to read about or fiction books you want to experience and things like that. So you're kind of have a very compelling and fun method to learn in terms of vocabulary acquisition and grammar versus just reviewing a grammar book or using an SRS flashcard system or a vocabulary list. Not to say don't use those things, but when you're reading, you kind of get this compelling method, which is just so massive in the end of the day. And it, like I said, it just makes the idea of learning a language a lot easier because you're enjoying yourself, but then you're getting the benefits of this vocabulary acquisition and you're getting the benefits of grammar, and things like that. So it's just really very big in the end of the day. So, I think that it's important to also kind of point out that I think that reading is probably the most beneficial if at least you have a solid foundation in the language, like an intermediate level or something like that. Some foundation in grammar, some vocabulary foundation, because, there are some advocates out there that will kind of advocate reading right from the start, right from the beginning. And while I think it can be beneficial, I think you do lose some of the advantages of reading, right? Because if you're a beginner, like a very elementary beginner, chances are you don't really have any vocabulary or very limited vocabulary, and so you're kind of restricted to reading texts that are very simple or very basic. And so in that sense, it's not very compelling, it's not very fun, you're losing that advantage. And then usually too, you don't have like a big foundation in grammar. So while you might not have to, or you might not approach reading in the sense of, well, I'm going to read more complicated text and not the elementary stuff, you also kind of have the other disadvantage where if you're reading kind of very difficult material, you don't understand anything because you have no vocabulary foundation. You're not seeing grammar in context because you're not aware of grammar. So, as a beginner, you're kind of caught in between both those places of using the very elementary material and it being kind of boring and sort of slow, or using very hard material where you don't understand anything because your foundation in grammar and vocabulary is not there. So I do think that reading is probably the best when you do have some foundation in vocabulary or grammar at least, but you can use it kind of at that elementary level, but it's just something to point out. But like I said, I think reading is so huge. It made a huge difference in my progress. I thought that a lot of my vocabulary acquisition really started to ramp up when I made reading a significant part of my language learning process. It really helped me with grammar and a lot of things, and I think it really can help you too. So if you're not reading already, really consider that. And so that's what I had to say. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.